When and where were you born?
I was born 1948, May 20th, 1948, in Good Samaritan Hospital in Lebanon, Pennsylvania.
Did you have a large family or a small family?
Medium family. I have one brother and one sister, and a mother and father.
What were you doing before entering the service?
Before entering the service, I was working with my father on bridge construction. At the time I got drafted, I was working up in Milford, Pennsylvania, which is up in Pike County on Interstate 84.
Did your family have a military history?
Yes. All of my father's brothers were all in the military. As a matter of fact, my uncle Bill was killed in the Philippines about 3 days before my uncle George, who was in the Coast Guard, and my dad, who was in the artillery, got to the Philippines, and they were going to visit him, but when they got there, he had died killed in action. And my one uncle on my mother's side was stationed he was in Italy during World War II.
When did you get drafted?
I got drafted in January of 1968.
Were you surprised by the event?
No, not really. Actually, I was getting kind of bored because all my friends were in the Army, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I got drafted, and it was cold and miserable up in Pike County in December.
Where did you train, and how were your first few days?
After we got inducted, we were sent to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was probably only ever out of Pennsylvania once or twice, and never really in a mixed group of people like I had down in Fort Benning. It's interesting because when I went to high school at Elko, we had one black, no Catholics, no Jewish people. It was just all us white wasps. That's all that was there. So when we got down there, we were in with just a mixture of people from all across the map, and it was a little frightening, a lot frightening.
Did you receive any specialized training?
After you go through your 8 weeks of basic training, they take a number of tests, and it's interesting because when you take these tests, you try to figure out what you're going to be good at. So I tried to convince them that I was a pacifist and didn't want anything to do with the military, and somehow I ended up in the infantry. And it was unique that I was also in the top 10% of the graduating class, and we all got sent to infantry, which I find hard to believe, but that's where we went to. Our next stop was what's called AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, at Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Was it difficult for you to adapt to military life?
Not really, because I had known, talking to my father and to my uncles and everything else, and my family life wasn't real strict, but we did have certain rules and regulations that we had to abide by as kids, so it wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it, actually.
Where was the main area that you served in?
I was in the States for 6 months. I was in Vietnam for 6 months, and then came back to finish out my 2 years at Fort Riley, Kansas. So I was overseas most of the time.
What were your main duties in the military?
After I got sent to Vietnam again, I was 11 Bravo, so that means I was infantry. And when we got there, you go to a place called the 9th Replacement Battalion. And once you get there, that's where everybody goes. And then you just wait until they call your name, and they send you to whatever unit needs people. I happened to get sent to the 9th Infantry Division, which were, at the time, the 9th was in the Mekong Delta. And I was with a group called Mobile Riverine Force, and we lived on ships and traveled up and down the river, just humping the boonies.
What does that mean?
That means we spent a lot of time walking. Because you were always wet, they would only keep us out there for 3 to 4 days because you'd shrivel up like a prune if they didn't. So again, in Vietnam you had 2 seasons, the wet season and the dry season. In the wet season it was wet, in the dry season it was dry.
What emotions did you feel?
I remember when I was in AIT in Fort Gordon, we were all afraid we were going to get sent to Korea, and nobody wanted to go to Korea because it was cold in Korea. And we didn't think too much of Vietnam because at the time there were a lot more people volunteering for Vietnam than they needed. So we thought we would backfill some of the regular Army troops that got sent to Vietnam. But then when we did get sent to Vietnam, it was kind of an interesting experience. I remember the first time that I jumped out of a helicopter and I landed in the mud and sank up to my butt. I wanted to cry, but I looked around and I didn't see anybody else crying. And at that time I thought, well, if they're not crying, I guess I'm not crying either. So away we went. Now, your emotion, it's a roller coaster ride.
During the time of your service, did you establish any friendships?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you always did that. We established some great friendships. But again, you have to remember Vietnam was kind of a different war because you were sent over there for 365 days. I knew that on the day I went over there that I was going to spend 365 days over there. On my 365th day, I was coming home, provided I lived that long. That's the way it worked. So you constantly had people rotating in and out. And many times the people that you came with, you never stayed with as a group. So you might get in with a group of people where you may not spend more than 2 or 3 months with them because they would be rotating back home.
Here it says that one of your friends, Deanna Miller, still lives in South Dakota.
Yes, that's correct. Some of the best friends I made was after I went to sniper school. I went to sniper school in November of '68. So from November of '68 to July, excuse me, of '69, there were 8 of us that were stationed in one group, and Deanna was my partner. And Deanna and I we sort of drifted apart after we got out of the Army, but then later in life, probably about 20 years later, we got back together again. And now with the advent of the internet, I have a website up there, and people, we do searches on each other, and you find all kinds of people. Matter of fact, I just got an email from a guy whom I haven't heard from since 1968. So we renew a lot of friendships.
How did you remain in contact with your friends and family from home?
From when I was in the Army? Well, again, when you were stateside, you had you had the opportunity to call home once in a while, and there was always letters. Once you got over to Vietnam, I only ever had the opportunity to call home once when I was in the field. The rest of the time, it was mail. Now, because you didn't have to pay for stamps, you simply wrote free on the envelope. But we sent a lot of mail. The mail was great. People back here always sent me. I always had mail, always.
Did you have any recreational or off-duty activities?
When we were they had a big base camp called Dong Tam, where they would have like volleyball courts set up, miniature golf court or miniature golf courses, enlisted men's club, officers club, and you could go to some of those, but most of the time we were never in base camp that much. We were always out in the field. And then after going to sniper school, we got sent to little company-sized base camps that had nothing. Our recreation would be coming back in the morning and, I don't know, sitting around and drinking a beer, I suppose. That was the only recreation we had.
How did you obtain the Sergeant E5 rank?
That's pretty interesting, and I think on my notes there I said it's an interesting story. I was a private first class. You're a private E1 when you go in the Army, and you automatically become a private first class, a PFC, once you get overseas. That's automatic. And then the next rank you attain would be an E4, which would be a specialist, 4th grade, and then on to a sergeant. And when I had volunteered for sniper school, I was a PFC, a private first class, or so I was told. My promotion to Spec 4, Specialist 4th class, came through when I was at sniper school. Now, as the top shooter in the class and graduating as the honor graduate, I was automatically promoted a rank. Well, they didn't know that I was a specialist 4, so I got promoted to specialist 4 again. And then when we went down to our duties as snipers down with the 3rd Battalion, 47th Infantry, we were down there for about, oh golly, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And then finally our promotion came through for all of us to become a Sergeant E5. But it was a battle because no one really wanted us.
Did you receive any specialized training?
Yes, like I said, in November of right in the beginning of, I think about maybe at the end of October, I guess, I happened to be sitting on one of the ships in the orderly room, which is like the office, and we saw a memo that came through looking for volunteers for sniper school. So I thought, well, how long's sniper school? And they said it's a month. So I said, well, if I'm in school for a month, I'm not in the field for a month. So if I'm in school for a month, no one's trying to shoot me for a month, so that's worth something. So I figured, yeah, I'll try it, why not? But I really liked it. I enjoyed it, as a matter of fact. And we had 3 weeks worth of solid shooting training, and then another week's worth of just concealment training. So we spent a month training for sniper school.
What awards did you get, and how did you obtain them?
Well, I have a whole list of them. I don't even remember half of them. I had to look back in some of my records to figure out what they were. I think there were 4 Bronze Stars, 2 Army Commendation Medals, Air Medal, Vietnamese Gallantry Cross, Vietnamese Service Medal, a bunch of other stuff. And you get them by doing your job. And my job just happened to be making sure that the enemy no longer existed. So the more of the enemy that I got rid of, the more awards I got.
Did your unit receive any special awards or commendations?
Yes, the Army has what's called Presidential Unit Citations, and they award those from time to time for units that do a good job out in the field. So the biggest problem was when you start out, like being in the 9th Division, I was in the 3rd Brigade, 60th Infantry, and then I switched from the 3rd to the 60th to the 4th of the 47th. 3rd of the 47th, excuse me, 3rd Battalion, 47th Infantry. So sometimes we had awards from one group, and then you go to another group, and then they have some other awards. So after a bit, you don't pay much attention to them.
Where were you when your military service ended?
Fort Riley, Kansas. I was on the 5th U.S. Army Rifle and Pistol Team in Fort Riley, Kansas. You ever been to Kansas?
No. How did you return home?
It was when we returned home from Vietnam. That was an interesting time because that's when President Nixon said he was going to start pulling troops out of Vietnam and start doing Vietnamization, or giving the country back over to the Vietnamese people to defend, similar to what President Obama wants to do in Iraq. But pretty much what happens is, all they did was they took everybody that had less than 2 weeks to go in country, which was me, and they took all those people out of this group and made a new group. So everybody like myself, I was going home in 2 weeks. I didn't have to go to the field anymore. I had myself buried. A nuclear bomb wouldn't get me as deep as I was buried. I was going home. So they just there was 800 of us that went home, getting on airplanes that 1,200 replacements get off of. So that meant there was a net gain in country of 400 troops. That was pretty neat because they sent us home. We had a big special celebration in Fort Lewis, Washington, in Seattle, Washington, where they had the World's Fair. They had a big parade for us, and they had when we flew home, they had a special ceremonies. We landed in Chicago. We landed in Pittsburgh, and then finally into Harrisburg.
How were you greeted by your family, friends, and other acquaintances?
Oh, it was great. And again, remember, my family was military, so, and there was a lot of backing, and we had a lot of backing. I mean, if you were in your bigger area, like we were out in Seattle, people were throwing stuff at us, spitting on us, and stuff like that, and we were told not to wear our uniforms. But here in Schaeferstown, it's totally different. So it was really nice. As a matter of fact, I had my picture on the front page of the Lebanon Daily News twice. I guess I was a celebrity at the time. Now I just get my name in the paper for what people think I do or don't do.
Was it difficult readjusting to your regular life?
No, and I think the important thing to remember, you hear a lot of stories about Vietnam, about people that went over there and went crazy or did something else. And the people that I find that got involved with that were half crazy to begin with. I had a good, solid family structure. My mom took me to church and Sunday school whether I wanted to go or not. So I had that backing. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I had that backing, you know, and I had great respect for my parents. And like I told some kids, when I was in Vietnam, I unfortunately smoked cigarettes. And I knew that if my mom knew I smoked a cigarette, it would break her heart. She knew that I was blowing people's heads off, and she didn't care about that. But if she knew that I smoked a cigarette, that would devastate her. So the whole time I was over there, there was never a picture of me smoking a cigarette. And when I got home, I quit. So what you had to do, Katie, was you had to go over there with your head screwed on straight. And the interesting part about it is, when I got over there, I couldn't think of home. I could lay there at night and close my eyes and try to think of home, and I couldn't. And when I got back here, sometimes I would close my eyes and try to think of what was going on over there, and I couldn't do that either. And I can remember some things like it was yesterday, but when Miller and I get together, he talks about, do you remember when? And I say, I don't have a clue. The only way I can remember when is my mom saved every letter that I sent home, and my parents passed away a while ago, and I still have those letters. So if I want to figure out what I was doing on this date in 1968, I just have to find that stack of letters and look through it and find the date. What was I doing on, what's the date? The 22nd? In 1968, I can tell you what was happening in Vietnam. You had to, if you had a good upbringing, you had a solid family life, you were fine.
Have you remained in contact with your military friends?
Yes, like I said, Deano Miller and I mean, I've been to 3 of his daughter's weddings. I flew out there to South Dakota. He's come in here to my 2 kids' weddings. I've flown out for his 60th birthday party. He's flown in here for my 60th birthday party. 2 years ago, we were down in Fort Benning for the 50th reunion of the Army Marksmanship Training Unit, and a couple of people from Sniper School were there, and we hooked up with a bunch of old instructors that we had there. So, and I get emails all the time from people that see my website, and we renew old friendships and talk about old times. You'll do the same thing one of these days. You know that, don't you?
What?
Talk about what you did when you were in 10th grade at Elko.
Have you since joined any veterans organizations?
No. The only veterans organization I belong to is the American Legion in Richland, and I belong there ever since I got back from Vietnam, and I think I was there maybe twice. But a friend of mine who was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam has talked me into getting more involved, so I help march in the parades and I help do the 21 gun salutes and stuff like that. But I'm not a big joiner in that stuff.
How has your military service affected your life?
The best thing that ever happened to me was I got drafted. I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't a super good kid. I managed to flunk 11th grade English. How do you flunk 11th grade English? By being a goof off. And I had a teacher who pulled me aside in school and said, Howard, you're not a dummy. You're just lazy. And for some reason you want to act like an idiot. So what happened in the Army, I figured out really, really early, and it's like anything else in life. If you just do part of what's going to get you ahead, the rest of it will come along naturally. One of the things that I always liked in the Army was when somebody gave you a task to do, you did it because they rewarded you. The Army was really, really good at rewarding you for a job well done. That's why I got so many medals. I knew what I had to do. Miller and I would go out there, And he's just a great guy. And we went out there and we were no nonsense people. There was no drinking, no drugs, no smoking, no nothing. You went out there and you did your job and you got well rewarded. And that's one of the things I learned, that you do your job, you get well rewarded, and when you're reaping the benefits of what you did, you look at these other nitwits who, for some oddball reason, want to fight the system. And these are the guys that are always in trouble, always getting the lousy jobs, never getting an advancement, always behind the eight. And I figured, I want to be ahead of the pack. I don't want to be behind. I don't even want to be part of the pack. I want to be ahead of the pack. It's a lot more fun up front.
Have you learned any life lessons from your service?
I learned a lot of life lessons. One of the things you learn that we live in the greatest nation in the world. There is absolutely no place like this in the world. And that the people that surround us, whether they agree with what you're doing or whether they disagree with what you're doing, just the fact that they can do both is the really neat part. And you really come to appreciate an awful lot of things that we have that other people don't have. I know I've got a lot of friends in Europe, and I spend pretty good amount of time with those people over there. And while you think that it's a really nice place, over there, it would be impossible, almost impossible, to live in a house like I live in here. There's no one over there that they think, well, I live in a castle, and I don't. And when you tell them that you own 12 acres of land and they look at you like you're crazy, they don't have that stuff. They just don't have it. I can own as many guns as I want. They can own one. That's it. I can go hunting almost any place I want. They can't. They have very socialized medicine. As a matter of fact, my buddy in Germany has to pay 3 times the amount of money we pay because his socialized medicine doesn't cover the basic needs of what his family needs. So he has to pay a lot more for it. There's just no place like America.
Are you glad that you served in the military?
I am, and I think my parting shot says I wouldn't swap it for anything, because it was first off, I got to go to a place I've never been to before. I got to go on 2 R&Rs. I got to spend a week in Bangkok, Thailand, and that was just an amazing place. I mean, it's just another really neat place. And then I got to spend a week in Taipei in Taiwan, and again, it's a place that you just I'd never get there. To spend 6 months in Fort Benning, Georgia, with people from Louisiana who I think they speak English. I was never too sure. And in 1966 or 68, when you drove from Fort Benning to Fort Gordon, about 120 miles, you drove the back roads where you saw people living in railroad cars. You saw stuff that you had only seen in books in school, and all of a sudden you're seeing this stuff, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. Or you get down to a place where, if you want to, the white people come in this door, the black people come in that door. If you want to sit and drink a beer together or drink a soda together, you come out of your respective spots and you sit in the middle. And to us, that was alien. Why would you do that? That's nuts. No, that's the way it is. So you just get a greater appreciation for what you have. And more than anything else, I get to be interviewed by kids like you. I like to explain to kids the way things really were at the time. A lot of people will think that, all that happened in Vietnam, where people got drunk or they were on drugs or they were just shooting up the place. And there are times, the most favorite line is, there were months and months and months of boredom punctuated by pure moments of hell. You would go forever and nothing would happen. Months. And just like that, in 15 or 20 minutes, you think the whole world's crashing down on you. And then it goes away again. And then you go back to normal.
Would you ever go back under different circumstances?
Well, it was interesting. Miller has gone back twice. The first time he asked me to go back, I don't know what I was doing. I think I was pretty involved with the kids or something like that, and I probably didn't have any money at the time to go back. But the second time he was going back, he said, "Hey, we're going back to Vietnam again. You got to go along." All right, I'll go. Well, about that time, my son goes to Penn State, and he's on the soccer team up there. And the Penn State soccer coach used to be the soccer coach at Elko, Barry Gorman, and Barry Gorman and I are good buddies. So I had already taken 2 soccer teams to Elko. So when Ross goes to Penn State, Barry says, let's go to Germany to play soccer. I said, great, I know people over there, I'll get it set up. Well, it happened to be at the same time Miller wanted to go to Vietnam, and I just decided I'm not going anywhere where I can't drink the water. So I opted not to go to Vietnam, but to go back to Germany with my son and Gorman, and renew old friendships over there as opposed to going to Vietnam. Would I go back there? Yes, I would. I think it would be interesting. Miller said he was back at all the places where we used to be. Some of them are still there. Some of them are memorials, but it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. I wouldn't mind it. It's a long flight.
Do you ever visit the memorials in D.C.?
Oh, yeah. Yes, matter of fact, myself, my brother, Jack Hartman from Schaefferstown, who was in Vietnam, and Larry Stoller, who's one of the county commissioners, who was from Schaefferstown, and Larry and I were in Vietnam at the same time. We went down for the dedication. And it was pretty interesting because we got to sit right up front with the dignitaries. It was pretty neat. We wore the medals that we had and the patches that we had, and people respected you for that, and they took pretty good care of you. And I've been down there, oh golly, pretty often. Matter of fact, I go down there about every year with Mr. Dissinger's class. So we go down to the wall and down to the statues.
Is there anything else you want to add?
A good friend of mine from Schaefferstown, Eric Ream, was killed in Vietnam. He has a twin brother, Brian, lives in Richland. Eric was in the 82nd Airborne, and he died about 3 or 4 months after I got out. One of my best friends over there, John Kiesling, died in a stupid stunt that he pulled. And then the next time I see him, I'm going to remind him it was a really stupid stunt, Kiesling. You should have never done it. He knew better. But it is what it is. I have no regrets. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. I'm not going to sit here and dwell on it. I just move on.
Did their deaths make you think twice about what you were doing over there?
You learn very quickly. I can remember the first time I saw an American killed. He was killed, and we were just sort of standing there, dumbstruck, like, oh my God. And I remember a big black sergeant came up behind me and grabbed me by the back of the neck and threw me forward and said, he's dead. There's nothing you can do about him, and unless you want to be dead too, get moving. And all of a sudden it's like, I guess he's right. So you work awfully hard to make sure you don't get dead. A lot of people ask me how, and I've been running ambulance for 26 years here in Schaefferstown. They ask you, how can you stand it? Vietnam kind of hardened me to some of it, but I get softer and softer the older I get. But I think if you know that you're going in there to do a job and you act professional, and this is what I tell all the EMT kids, and hopefully you'll become an EMT kid in a year or so. Oh, come on. That you're trained to do a professional job, and you take your training, and if you want to be scared later, but you don't have time to be scared now. You can be scared later, and that's fine. Be scared. There's nothing wrong with that. Anybody that says they're not scared is a liar. I was scared all the time. I just tried my best not to show it. But I think it's a great experience. I applaud people that do it, and I just think that it's a good experience.